Hey, I am Father Mark Marion.
I'm Brother Elijah.
I'm Jackie Mulligan.
We, two of us, are Franciscan friars of the Renewal, and one of us is not.
Can you tell which are which?
And this, my friend, is Ascension Presents. Very happy to have Jackie and Brother Elijah, with us. And we're going to talk a little bit about fasting and health. And why don't you introduce our guest, Brother Elijah?
So Jackie here is a wellness practitioner by profession, and I've just gotten to know her over this last year or two, having the opportunity to speak about fasting, present it to different groups, parishes, young people in religious formation, and it's just been a joy to learn myself about the benefits of fasting, kind of be renewed in that myself, and also to work with Jackie. It's just been a joy. So we're glad to have her on. And
thank you. It's such a blessing and an answered prayer to be here with you today. Thank you.
Yeah.
And can you tell us a little bit about maybe what you do with the friars?
Yeah, sure.
And then kind of big picture.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a wellness practitioner. I have a practice called Reform Wellness. And actually the name of my practice was inspired by the postulants. So I work with the CFRs and I run the wellness program for the postulants. And when I first started working with them, I watched them daily in formation. And month after month when I went, I literally watched them change by doing what they committed to obediently. So praying at the same time, eating at the same times, and really dying to self and growing closer to who they knew God was calling them to be. And as I watched this, I kind of made this parallel between what I was watching and also what I asked my clients to do, and that is to obediently and consistently die to the things that no longer serve us in order to become healthier and holier and happier. And so I watched them in formation, and I literally watched them reform into new men. And so it was inspiration for me to really change my practice to invite God at the center. So I have a wellness practice that's faith-based. And so I really help people not only look at the state of their body and their state of their human health, but also to really assess and analyze the state of their soul in order to really understand what the quality of their life is and their well-being.
Yeah, so we thought it would be good to just start with the spiritual benefits of fasting. Why do we do it, first of all? And we'll get into some of the nuts and bolts, the practicals, the health benefits physically in our second session. But I think that it's a little bit of a difficult topic, fasting, because if you're like me, we don't want to do it. It's difficult, it's uncomfortable physically and even spiritually. But I find that we often have divorced the practice of prayer and fasting from one another. And it seems like in the lives of the saints, in the life of Christ, that's not something we should do. So we have Jesus, after he receives the baptism from the Father in the beginning of the gospel, he goes immediately into the desert. In Luke's gospel, it says that the Spirit drove him into the wilderness. Mm-hmm. And one of the ways that he was driven into that wilderness and the way that he lived in that wilderness was prayer and fasting. At the end, it's like the understatement of the year gospel passage. After 40 days of not eating, he was hungry. Surprise. But I think it just shows the importance of we need to couple our prayer with fasting. And so I'm just going to talk a little bit about a couple reasons to fast and the kinds of benefits. So one reason to fast is to cultivate and sustain intimacy with God. Fasting creates space. It creates space physically, which we'll talk about, but it also creates space spiritually, interiorly. We kind of live naturally from momentary gratification to momentary gratification, especially in this day and age where we can get that gratification immediately with fast food, with a phone, with the internet, with whatever we're looking for. We can find it like immediately. And usually the best things in life require waiting. Mm-hmm. They require a disposition of receptivity. And fasting really helps cultivate that disposition, because instead of immediately grasping for food when we're hungry, we're saying, hold on, I have a deeper desire at work here. And that deeper desire is for Christ, for intimacy, for union with him. And so I find that physically fasting, not eating, helps me become more aware of the reality that I receive everything from my Father. And it puts me in this posture to receive his gaze, because that's ultimately the intimacy that I'm yearning for. And the intimacy that comes from this immediate gratification might even be intense, might be good, it might not be something sinful, but it isn't lasting. And so fasting puts a pause on those immediate gratifications in order to say, okay, I'm going to seek the one gratification that God placed upon my heart. Like St. Augustine says, our hearts are restless until they rest in thee. And say, okay, I'm going to seek for the satisfaction of my desire from the one place that it can be satisfied. And that's in the gaze of the Father. So I find that to be an essential reason for fasting, is to cultivate that disposition of receptivity and to place ourselves in that intimacy with the Father before his gaze. Another benefit of fasting would be it makes our intentions amazingly powerful. And so we have this example in the 9th chapter of Mark's Gospel, where the disciples try to cast out demons, which they've had some great success at. In Mark 6, Jesus sends them out 2 by 2, and they cast out demons and heal people, and it quote unquote works. But then they come across this boy, and if you remember, it's the boy who's convulsing, seizures, he's throwing himself into fire, like it's a pretty intense possession. And the disciples can't do it. And afterwards, after Jesus does it, they ask him, why were we not able to? And Jesus says, this one can only be cast out by prayer and fasting. So if you have an intention in your life, if you have a child, a sibling, a friend who's trapped in chains of addiction, drugs, is away from the church, etc., our intercession is strengthened by fasting. And the Fathers use this image to kind of make that a little bit clearer. Of prayer is like incense rising up before the presence of the Father to hear our prayers. But fasting is the coal. And so that incense is not going to burn and give off that sweet fragrance and rise up to the throne of God when it's not coupled with fasting. It makes it that much more effective in God's sight and pleasing in his sight. Because really it's an act of faith. It's an act of faith saying, okay, I can't provide for this situation. I can't provide even for myself. And so in faith, Father, you provide. And it creates a lot of space for grace.
What do you think, Jackie?
So much good stuff there. I actually use the same analogy with creating space. So I have 9 pillars of health that I focus on in my practice, and one of them is space. And so it's literally creating space and cultivating space within the body, but also within the soul to invite God in. And so I think, when we sacrifice the immediate needs of the body, we open the eyes of the soul and we allow ourselves to really dive in deep to the places where we're not usually able to go. And something you said that was so true is like really coming outside of self and doing it with the intention for another person or for a specific prayer outside of self. And it's easy, especially when we're making health goals or prayer intentions, to self-sabotage and to kind of quit early because it's for ourselves, and maybe even allow the door of doubt to open up, where the evil one might sneak in to kind of say, you can't do this, or you are hungry, just eat now, it's okay, you've done it long enough. But the point is that fasting keeps us hungry physically and spiritually, and we want to stay hungry for the Lord. And I think in this modern age where we're constantly just being so quickly, instantly gratified, it's hard to stay hungry for anything. If we need something, we can download an app in 2 seconds and get it, And so even if you don't have transportation, you can call an Uber. There's no really more walking or anything. So it's just really an invitation to dive deeper, and it's truly, oxygen for the soul is oxygen for the body. We'll go into some of the physical benefits later on in a different video, but truly what we're doing is we're repairing our souls and we're repairing our bodies when we fast. And so if we're really looking at the wellness of our well-being, or the health of our well-being, we have to look at both. And there's really not a separation from our body and our soul. We are our body and soul. And so really respecting the gift and glorifying the gift that our body is, and truly paying attention to the why. And I invite you watching to really, if you have this desire to fast, let's get really clear on why, physically and also spiritually, on what you want to offer it up for and why you have the desire to fast.
And you were mentioning one of the friar priests you've worked with, kind of reflecting on the spiritual benefits in his offering of self to others from his own sort of diet improvement.
Yeah. So the correlation that was made was that he started to understand that what he was feeding himself was actually feeding the people that he was preaching to. So abstaining from food in general for a longer period of time allowed and created more space for healing in the body, which allowed for more space for God. So less brain fog, less fatigue, and allowed space for him to truly go deeper in prayer. But even more than that, on a regular basis, when fasting from things that created more stress within the body, like bread or sugar, he understood that the way that he fed himself well with whole foods was actually resulting in the way that he was feeding the people he was preaching to. And so it truly was a mirror image of what you put in is what comes out. Which was just such a beautiful connection, and just all the more reason why we have to really look at the balance of the fruits of what's happening in our ministries, in our families, in our relationships. That's health. It's the way that we live in general, and really understand what we're being called to fast from, whether that's abstaining from food completely or abstaining from something else that doesn't bear fruit.
Okay, so what would you say to somebody? They're like, okay, I love Jesus, I want to follow Jesus,
Ready.
but like that seems like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Fasting seems like a little much. It sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
So why go to that next level?
I would say don't sell your desires short. We're created with magnanimity, right? Magnanimity is just a big word for like greatness of soul. Like all of us have this desire deep within us, and it might be covered over by a lot of whatever. Like I'd rather just be comfortable, which is in all of us. But fasting is a great way, and give it a shot to awaken that greater desire within you. That desire to dream the dream that God has already placed within your heart, to awaken that. So I would say don't sell yourself short, give it a shot.
And I think in our next video we'll have a chance to sort of, like you said, get into the nuts and bolts of like what this actually might look like. Is there anything else on the kind of the spiritual aspect of it that you want to say that?
What I often see when especially when the religious life clients that I work with, when they fast, I see their prayer life just amplify, and it's so special because they're receiving all these physical benefits that they may not have even realized was a bonus. But sometimes, especially living in community, there's such a focus on really maintaining the state of your soul, really diving in and keeping your soul healthy. Not enough focus maybe on the physical. So fasting kind of does this thing where it's kind of the both end, where you're getting the physical and the spiritual benefits all in one. And what I really love is that the expectation you had going in is it's kind of like when you go to a retreat, you're like, oh, okay, this is what I'm going to focus on. This is what I really want to pray about. And not only is that not what you come out of, but it's like something even greater and deeper and better that Jesus kind of comes in and pulls out. And so it really is an invitation to dive in deeply, but also to connect and get uncomfortable. We very rarely grow when we're comfortable. And so it really is an invitation to get uncomfortable, to stay a little hungry, and to truly push through that and to grow closer. And it is a leap of faith or an act of faith, as you mentioned in the beginning, because you don't know what's going to be on the other side. And it's kind of a lore in itself.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful, good stuff. Brother Elijah, you've been here before. Jackie is our first ever non-friar guest, and
so
you see why. Why we had her. And so we thank you both. We'll be back with you again next week. Thanks for watching. Remember, we're pilgrims on this earth. Somos peregrinos, poco a poco. Vamos a llegar. We're gonna make it. God bless y'all.